We're talking here today with Chuck Ellenbaum, the legendary professor of anthropology and religious studies at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, where he started in 1969, taught for over 40 years, and retired in 2013, and has been enjoying his retirement since then. Mr. Ellenbaum's also been at the forefront regarding the methods of teaching anthropology, and was a consultant on the esteemed PBS series Out of the Past, which is still available on YouTube, which we highly recommend, and we'll put links to that in the description below. But today we're here to talk to Mr. Ellenbaum about work he did almost 50 years ago in the early 1970s, when he directed an excavation of a Native American burial mound in St. Charles, Illinois. And that was when a subdivision was threatening that particular site. So with that, welcome,
Thank you.
Mr. Ellenbaum. And thank you very much for talking with us today.
How did you first become aware of the St. Charles site?
The builder was trying to get permission to excavate and put in houses. So whoever he was negotiating with said, you need to excavate and just save whatever's there. Just don't bulldoze it. So we got asked. Being community college, we were extraordinarily inexpensive.
Your work there, was that a salvage operation?
Yeah, that's how I thought of it.
And then
Whatever you can save is not in the bulldozer's path.
Right, I was just going to ask this, like, for our audience, could you describe a salvage operation as opposed to just excavating a different archaeological site?
When you're doing a regular site, not a salvage site, you're going to take a lot of photographs, you're going to do a lot of surveying, you're going to do a lot of excavating very carefully, layer by layer, segment by segment, and taking field notes of everything found. There'll be a number on every artifact, which you can then trace back to the square map for level 10, and you can build a composite picture of what's there, and what's there at a moment in time, but also over time as the layers get excavated. And then you carefully go over the mound to see if there's any bits which might have decayed away and are in that dirt. In a salvage site, you have a week before we're going to start building, so you just grab everything you can, take a lot of photographs. They'll tell you things. You're not going to have the time to meticulously excavate and keep track of what you're finding. You grab what you can, take as good a record as you can, and again, taking a lot of photographs, and that's what you do.
When did the dig actually take place? Was that in 1972, do you recall, or was it?
Yes, 72, because that's when my first child was born. And we had Native American protesters that threatened they'd come to the hospital.
Did the dig take place over multiple seasons, or was it a single season?
Single season.
Single season, okay.
Because they were going to bulldoze and build.
I see.
Which I'm not sure they ever did.
I don't think they did, actually.
So who worked on the dig? Obviously you did, but then who was it, COD students? Or
COD students.
were there other volunteers too, or just students?
And some volunteers.
Was it a special class, or did you pick certain ones to come and help?
I didn't pick them, they were self-selected. I ran a field course, and they would get college credit, do some reading, take an exam, and they were learning field methods.
Yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, sure was. Where was the site actually located? Do you recall along routes, or do you want there?
Yes, Forest Preserve was on our riverside, and there was something that they had built further up, and we used that as but on this side of North Avenue, we used that as a reference point.
Oh, okay.
we'd have to park along the roadway
Oh,
to
wow.
do this.
And this was south of the creek, south of Ferson Creek?
I think, to be honest, I didn't pay any attention to Ferson
You were
Creek
just
at the
kind
a long
of
time.
time
autopilot
ago.
when you were going.
That's where the mosquitoes were coming from.
What was that area like at that time? Was it, I mean, were there other houses there?
Yes, there were other houses downstream of where we were,
Okay.
on both sides of the road.
Oh, okay. There's so much going on as you go past it.
That's right.
You can't really see.
I imagine there wasn't, aside from those handful of houses, though, there wasn't too much along that stretch.
Just cars going back
Just
and
cars,
forth.
yeah. Just like today. That hasn't changed.
Yeah.
No,
Looking back on it, I know it's been a long time, but what are your memories of that dig, both positive and negative? I mean, what are the things that stand out to you as a positive thing and the things that were negative?
negative was not a lot of equipment. We borrowed a transit rod from the, say, engineering people. We used that. We built some sliders, screening on
Right,
a frame.
right.
You put the dirt and whatever you're finding and put it in that. Bought notebooks and things from the bookstore for them to take field notes. I think I used my own camera to take pictures.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a lack of,
Equipment.
You probably didn't have a whole lot of notice though before you started, did you?
should we say, 1 week?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I thought. Yeah, because if it was if a builder's wanting to build, they want this done yesterday.
Right.
So
And there were no textbooks. There was no time to find a good intro to archaeology textbook that talked about technique.
For the various volunteers and students and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been a challenge. How about any positive memories of the?
Oh, students were very, sort of motivated. They were seeing history opening up in front of them. They were learning that you excavate all day in the heat and the dirt, and no, you did not find a skull.
Yeah.
You found 6 pieces of pottery, busted Coke bottle, and a few things like that. But you gotta photograph it all, describe it, and save it. You never know.
Right. You never know what's relevant until after you have a chance to look at it.
So what were the archaeological methods that you used? I mean, like sample trenching, or I know you were screening.
We just excavated as we came to it.
Okay.
There weren't enough people to do sample trenching. That melds into my memories of Klein Creek Farm and then other sites and other places in the country. I seem to recall we walked the site with the students talking about what are we seeing, what aren't we seeing. What do you guys think is a good place to start? And here's some reasons for here, here's some reasons for there. And how do you hold a shovel so that you're,
Yeah, taking off just a sliver.
and yes, that's a trowel and you better get it sharp so you could shave with it, but then don't play around with it.
Mm-hmm.
And just the very basic stuff.
Right.
And trying to hold their interest. Then when the Indians came and picketed, that got their interest.
Were they on the
They
site
showed up.
while you were?
Yeah, they tore down walls.
Did you end up digging the entire mound, or was it
No, just part.
part of the sampling?
And when the Indians came, I told the students just stand back and watch. Take photographs if you want, but there's no way we're going to protect something that they believe is their sacred land.
Mm-hmm.
So just back off and we'll repair the damage. I mean, I have sympathy for what they wanted, but to ask me to preserve the land and
It wasn't really your call. You were just hired to. Excavation.
wasn't
Not
even hired in that
Yeah,
college.
that's true.
Yeah, they wanted reparations.
Oh, yeah, and that wasn't your place.
Was the excavation centered on the one burial mound, or were there any other features in the landscape that you investigated, or field walking, or anything of that sort?
There were high points. They weren't high. It was not a level, and here's one mound and nothing else. Looked like there were the remains of some other possible mounds, which had been weathered away.
Mm-hmm.
But 20 years later, I would have got ground-seeking radar and checked it out, but we didn't have that. So I'm pretty sure there would have been other things, encampment if nothing else, places where houses were, but then with the weather they weather away and you have a small mound of debris and vegetation, dirt, bones, pottery.
How should people in this area think about the mound site in St. Charles, as well as some of the other mound sites along the Fox River, and what they mean to our history, our prehistory, and so on?
Well, they're part of our past. America did not start with the English or the French or the Spanish. Started with some American Indian groups who came in waves. So some were prior to others. There's good material written on the peopling of the New World. And you had some major civilizations. The Mayans, the Inca, the Aztecs, and the Olmecs, and group after group.
And then we had Cahokia, that civilization there.
And there were a lot of thousands upon thousands of people there over time. And I haven't kept up with Cahokia, but I know with some of those other civilizations, you had slavery, you had human sacrifice, you have wars of conquest. It's a disservice to say American Indians or Native Americans, however this people you're talking about want to be described. They're human with all the same problems that we have. So American history did not start with us. And certainly stealing the land or taking the land by conquest, people who were here who by conquest got it from earlier migrants. It's not a simple thing
No.
that you get by waving the flag or celebrating holidays. You have to deal with that past
Right.
in all its squishiness. People did horrible things to each other, and it isn't that one group is the font of all virtue or the font of all evil. Given the right circumstances, everybody can inter the Japanese or exterminate a village. In some of the Native American villages in the Southwest, they were massacred by other Native Americans. When I was excavating in Israel, we had a Middle Bronze Age site that I worked on for about 2 weeks, mainly working with bones. And every bone showed the effect of an edged weapon, sword or spear, or they didn't call them war clubs, a mace-like thing, killing them. And they were just tossed into mass graves. And the dwellings, widespread fire, and then massacred people thrown in. And then a century later, somebody builds there, and you've got that as the base. The story repeats itself. We're not the font of virtue. We meaning humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we find new sites in the area, and I'm sure we'll continue to uncover more, hopefully not with a bulldozer, but as we uncover more sites, how would you suggest we treat them going forward, since things have changed?
Very carefully, whether private land or public land, you have a responsibility for the people who constructed this, and that they have a story that needs to be told. But you just don't, even on private land, you shouldn't just be willy-nilly excavating. Put your Indiana Jones hat on and go after it. You should be, if it were me, when we've been digging for plants or ran across something, I'd call the local historical society and the local museum, and I'd also notify the police if it's body parts, even if it's 2 centuries old. Let them know. Then there's no gossip.
Right.
Yeah. You don't want that coming back on you.
But you need to cross all the T's, dot all the I's, let as wide a group know as possible who you think have some, not ownership, but have some rights to what's going on. And I'd make sure it gets in the newspaper. And if it's big, get the news stations out here.
Yeah.
If it's Indian, talk to the local Indian groups.
And there's 2 or 3 at least in this area, right? Yeah.
How has archaeology changed during the course of your career, from when you were in grad school till, say, when you retired, or even now?
Well, just looking at the cameras you have, it's become much more sophisticated. You can do a lot more. You don't have to be bringing rolls of film along with you or plates for a large format camera. And by putting things on the cloud, you can manipulate the images easier, put things together.
And share with other people more easily.
Well, you want to be careful when you're sharing.
Yeah.
Because there are ownership rights to what's being photographed. That is, groups may feel this is part of their heritage, and who the hell are you to just expose it?
Yeah.
That's a lot less now, but it's still there. It's much more sophisticated in terms of technology. Ground-seeking radar. You can find burials without having to excavate at all. I found quite enlightening the excavations at Williamsburg on what they found in wells when I was excavating a well at Klein Creek Farm, and learn the do's and don'ts. You don't go down there yourself unless there's other people around. Better yet, you just use some sort of grabber to bring things up. Don't worry so much about the strata unless it's a significant area. Otherwise, the damn thing can collapse on you and you become an artifact.
You become part of the site.
Right.
Yeah, not what you want to have happen.
No.
And I imagine the changes in mapping, GPS, and everything is probably revolutionized.
You don't have to take compass bearings, find a survey marker, a permanent one, and then laboriously jump backwards, find its exact position. You don't have to guess at what the altitude is when something is up, and are these mounds about the same size without having to estimate. And that's only a part of it. It's just amazing.
Chuck, what would you advise people to do that are interested in this topic? What steps should they take and what should they do?
I would suggest that if people are interested in these sorts of things, they should contact their local historical society and their local high school. Are they involved in any cultural projects? Your local historical society, they may not have a need for excavation, but think of Geneva's. They have a rich archive of material, both written and artifactual, that they're always looking for people to help catalog and interpret. And you can be part of this story. Check with their local colleges and community colleges. They may well have lecture series, or they may even have coursework that you can audit.
Yeah.
You don't have to always pay tuition, and see what's out there.
Yeah.
And your local library.
Yes.
They will have resources, and they may well have speakers come in on a variety of topics, and they're always looking for ideas. What are the people out there interested in? And you can contribute to that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the other thing is, see what's out there in publications and read them. Some of them is crap. It's overly technical. You are a beginner, unless you aren't. And so you want the broad overviews, and then that will give you some intelligent, where do I want to specialize? Where do I want to read more on? Mound builders, the Aztecs, French and Indian Wars, Civil War. There's all kinds of things.
Well, Chuck, thank you very much for talking with
welcome.
us today, and we really enjoyed this and learned a lot, I think, about not only the St. Charles site, but archaeology in general. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
In our next episode, we'll explore what happened to the various artifacts and human remains that were unearthed from the multiple excavations of the Ferson Mounds in St. Charles, Illinois. And we'll summarize what we've learned about this important site.